What's up guys, it's Skill Up here. This is the weekly vendor reset video. Welcome back to the regular viewers. Welcome to the new ones. I do these videos every single week looking at what are the vendors selling and should you buy it. There are timestamps in the description below so you can actually jump back and forward to different items throughout the week if you happen to come back to this video. Yeah, it's the very first video in 1.6 that I'm putting out proper. The truth is guys, I've just been really busy. Everyone's asking me if I'm like quit the division or have I stopped covering it. No, I haven't. I've just had tons and tons of stuff on at the moment, and when I put out a video, I want to make sure it's a good one, and I haven't had time to put together a good video yet. That's the honest truth, but I am slowly plugging away at everything, and you can definitely expect videos from me in the future. I am not going anywhere. Anyway guys, with that, let's get on with this week's weekly vendor reset vid. At the gear vendor in the base of operations this week, we have a Nimble Holster. Now I will say that the stat rolls on this are quite poor, particularly the firearms and electronics rolls. However, Nimble is very flavor of the month at the moment, purely because it's sort of one of the go-to holsters if you're using the high-end builds, which are very popular. It's one of the most efficient ways of getting health back now that your heal has been nerfed, unless you are running lots of skill power. So do check out Nimble Holsters if you haven't. You're going to find that they make life a hell of a lot easier, particularly if you're playing solo. The advanced weaponry vendor has changed somewhat with the patch. He no longer sells those named weapons. They've been moved to the vendor downstairs. This week he's not selling anything particularly interesting. He's got a Marine Super 90 here. It's got Predatory, Meticulous, and Destructive. Meticulous is pretty great on this weapon. They have a fairly small magazine. It does help. Destructive, great PvE talent. Still good in PvP, but not as strong. And Predatory is a very good sustained talent, and especially good if you're using a shotgun, because you're typically going to be taking damage when you're using them quite up close. So this combination of talents actually works quite well for a PvE-focused shotgun. I would definitely not recommend using this in PvP. There's also a SOCOM M1A here. It's got 160% headshot damage, which is a solid roll. It's got Talented, which now has a higher electronics requirement than it does firearms requirement. That's been flipped around since the last patch, so it's actually a much more usable talent and far better for skill power users. It's got Adept, Pop, and Ability, and gets 7.5% crit. Very nice, again, for skill power users. And finally, Unforgiving, which I wouldn't recommend for this weapon. Because of the fact it's a sniper rifle, you're not aiming to take damage. What you would do is roll this one away, but it's in that third slot, so whatever you replace it with is free. You'd probably be going for something like Brutal to maximize your headshot damage. Overall, a fairly well-rolled SOCOM M1A. The M1A is still very strong, even though no one talks about it anymore, so check it out. At the special equipment vendor down in the terminal, obviously this guy has a whole bunch of new stuff. First of all, he sells all of the exotic weapons. They sell for 1331 Phoenix credits each, but don't forget your Phoenix credits cap has actually been increased to 5,000 now, so you can stockpile a whole bunch more of them, hoping for a good roll on one of these weapons. Now his stock will not rotate each week. He'll always be selling the same weapons, but the rolls on those weapons will change, so it's always important to keep checking back to see if any of them have improved, just like they were in previous patches. This week he's got a Centurion with Expert and Ferocious, which is a nice combination in PvE. Obviously, the Cassidy this week has Self-Preserved, Dominant, and Boomstick. None of these talents synergize well. Liberator's got Predatory, Swift, and Dominant. You would have to roll away Dominant on this thing because it's just not a great talent. However, Swift is also a bit wasted on this weapon because it's got a fairly low reload speed as it is. The Historian has Talented and Trained. Talented is for skill power users, and this weapon scales with firearms, so it does not synergize well. And the Pecan has Ferocious, great for PvE. It's got Adept, which synergizes well if you are stacking skill power and have short cooldowns on your abilities. And finally, the Pecan Talent, which gives you a larger magazine for every kill every time you reload. This is an okay combination of talents here. I'd probably roll away that Adept for something more firearms focused. Most Pecan users are going to be stacking firearms more than anything else. Either way, that's how the exotic weapons work from this vendor, and I'll absolutely give you a rundown of the talents and stats that have rolled each week. One weapon that's been getting a lot of play at the moment is the Sausage. This weapon here, it's popular in the Last Stand game mode because people use it with strikers, and each shot that you fire actually fires off 8 pellets. If each of those hit, hit, it counts for an extra 8% damage. It ramps up really fast given that the rate of fire on this thing is actually quite quick. And yeah, the reticle management is quite easy. So if you're using it close, it's pretty easy to get some big stacks against your target quite fast. This one here is good because it has Competent and Adept, both of which synergize well. You pop an ability and you immediately get 10% more damage, and you get 7.5% crit for 15 seconds. It's a really nice combination. And Meticulous you wouldn't use on this because it's a PvP focused weapon, and you're not going to be getting tons of kills in PvP, such that you would get a lot of benefit out of this talent. So roll that one away for something like Responsive, which would be ideal, and you'd have a very solid tactical sausage on your hands. There's also a military L86 LSW here, which did get a buff in the patch of about 4%. However, that's not enough damage to make it worthwhile using. You'd still be going for an M4 or an LVOA if you're looking for a weapon that performs like this one. There's a Tactician's Authority vest here that's rolled base stamina, bonus health at 15k out of a max roll of 16,000. This puts it at a sort of mid-tier roll. Health on kill is very handy, and ammo capacity is generally what you'd want on your chest as well. The stamina roll on this is definitely low, but overall it's a fairly well-rolled Tactician's Authority vest, and Tactician's Authority is definitely much more popular in this patch since it has been buffed. This Reclaimer vest has rolled Skill Haste, which does work quite well for the Reclaimer gear set. Ammo capacity base is nice, all resistance is terrible, and you'd roll that away, and unfortunately there is a low stamina roll as well, but hey, you can make do with it. This D3 FNC vest is actually quite good. It's got a 1240 stamina roll out of 1270, which is nice. Skill Haste, roll that away, you don't need that with the D3 set. Enemy armor damage is perfect if you're using this in PvE. This actually has very, very low utility in PvP, so don't worry about that stat. And ammo capacity is a must for this gear set, so that works quite well. Those of you still chasing an Alpha Bridge holster, this one has rolled really well. It's got 1200 across the board, 1265 stamina out of 1270 is really nice. The stat rolls here are really superb. The major attribute here is Skill Haste, which you could roll away to a number of things, but yes, excellently rolled Alpha Bridge holster. There's also a prototype electronics mod here, 236 electronics out of a max of 267, solid roll. It's got 3% skill haste as well, which is a max roll. You'd probably be going for bonus skill power in your major attribute slot if you're using an electronics mod, but those of you that really want to be able to fire off those skills fast, that is the bonus that you would be going for. There's also a prototype performance mod here, 3.5% turret damage out of a max of 4%. Guess what, ladies and gentlemen? Massive aren't done with us yet. They love giving us shotguns and pistols in the damn blueprints rotation, and they are staying true to form this week. We've got an M870 Express, had it 50,000 times, still not interested, thank you very much, and a snub-nosed Rhino, which is, yeah, pretty situational at best. So, hard pass on the vendors this week. There's a stamina vest blueprint, firearms knee pads, high velocity magazine which gives you critical hit chance. Wouldn't recommend that. You need to have an extended mag in pretty much every weapon that you run. A tyrant suppressor is actually quite good, and it fits on the smaller type weapons as well, like your smaller SMGs, like an MP7 for example. So very nice pick up there if you haven't got one. And there's also a stamina gear mod and the performance gear mod blueprint, which I don't recommend because it's simply too random when you roll them. And for anyone wondering if they fixed the underground vendor and do they sell anything good, the answer is no. They still just sell the normal caches. There's no need for you to go to the underground whatsoever. At the Autumn's Hope Safehouse, you've got a Seeker Mine mod here. It's rolled 3.5 out of a max of 4%. At the Dante's Run Safehouse, another performance mod here. This one is Sticky Bomb damage, 3.5% out of a max of 4%. At Camp Hudson, the gear vendor here is selling a Firearms mod. It's rolled base Firearms 229 out of a max of 267, which is actually extremely low. The base is 228, but hey, what do you do? And it's also got 3053 health, which is a fairly strong roll in that. This is definitely one of the go-to mods for PvP, and even for PvE if you're playing lots of solo and you want to focus on sustain. This is generally the mod that you would be going for. At the Meat Locker Safehouse, you're going to find a converted SMG-9 A2. It's rolled 19.5% critical hit chance out of a max of 22%. It's got Adept and Brutal on it, which are really nice. Brutal, especially in PvE, is good. It's a lot harder to land those headshots in PvP. Commanding, you would roll that away. This works because of the fact that it's got that 20% base crit chance plus 7.5% with Adept. If you're using, say, Pulse, for example, in PvE, you're pretty much finding yourself crit chance capped just by the combination of the base crit plus Adept plus your Pulse. So it works well. It means you don't need to put a lot of other crit chance on your gear, and you can focus on stacking critical hit damage. The SMG-9 isn't the best SMG to be going with. The MP7 is far better for burst DPS, the PP19 far better for sustain, and things like the Vector and the AUG are generally better from an all-rounder perspective. But still, if you really like the feel of this weapon, because it does feel quite unique and interesting, do give it a go. At the Madison's stand Safehouse, there is a prototype performance mod here that's rolled for Ballistic Shield Dmg 3.5 out of 4%. This is the mod that increases your damage done when you have your shield out. It does not increase your melee damage with your shield, as lots of people seem to think. It's purely about the weapon damage that you deal with your shield out. The mod does work, and yeah, it's pretty good to be running if you're focused on DPS when using your Ballistic Shield, but if you're looking at doing heroic incursions or legendary difficulty, you pretty much have to stack high health mods on your shield, because otherwise they'll burn through your shield really damn fast. At the Ward Safehouse, really nice pair of Decisive Gloves here. Now, Decisive is important for anyone using the Ballistic Shield that isn't using the defense gear set, right? If you're just running, say, Sentry's Call Ballistic Shield build, you generally want to stack a lot of electronics, actually, because you kind of want to have your shield as beefy as possible. Decisive is the one that gives headshots with your sidearm 35% more damage, which is just pretty much a must-have if you're running that build. Critical hit chance, sure, that's okay. Pistol damage is exactly what you want, and LMG damage you can roll away to something else. Overall, very nice combination of stats across this. So if you don't have a pair of gloves like this and you are planning on using your Ballistic Shield in a non-defense gear set build, these are great to go with. And there's also a prototype stamina mod here, 247 stamina out of 267 and 3,325 health. Good roll there as well. This is definitely a very strong health stacking mod. This would be pretty much the best you could go with, actually, if that's what you're looking for. The stat rolls could be slightly better in that stamina roll there, but overall very strong. At the Grindhouse Safehouse this week, we've got a Scar H. Now, everyone sees these numbers really high, 318,000 DPS. You're like, holy shit. The fact is, it actually assumes a certain level of accuracy, like headshot accuracy, at the maximum rate of fire, which is absolutely not possible with this weapon, given the fact that it has huge reticle bloom over time. However, it is still a very nice weapon if you can get that reticle under control. It's got 171 headshot damage, which is a phenomenal roll. Prepared is exactly what you'd want with this thing. Unforgiving is not what you want, because you're really going to be staying out of, out of danger. You're not going to be taking much damage, so roll that away for something like Brutal. And finally, Vicious is actually pretty good on this thing, given the fact that, again, you're going to be sitting back, hopefully taking less damage, and hopefully staying above 2 bars of health at most times. So a fairly good combination of talents here. Fantastic roll on that headshot damage. Put lots of accuracy on this thing as you mod for it. Don't worry too much about stability, because it's fairly easily managed. And yeah, it's a really, really nice weapon. And to go with it, there's also an Omega rifle suppressor here. 17% headshot damage, 4% critical hit damage, and 4% optimal range, which is wasted. It's not the best Omega rifle suppressor. We really would have wanted more headshot damage. It goes up to 18.5%, and we wanted critical hit chance, but still, at a pinch, if you're looking for the maximum amount of headshot damage you can put on a suppressor, the Omega rifle suppressor is the one you want, and this will do the job. At the Crypt Safehouse this week, there is an LVOA-C. The damage on it, per bullet damage, is actually quite strong, 17.1k for me. It's going to be different for you because it scales on your firearms, just so you know. I'll still get that question in my comments, no doubt. But anyway, there it is. 23% armor damage is an excellent roll. It's a max roll, and so that's great. Accurate is useful on this weapon because it does get a fair amount of reticle bloom, and this is helpful. Talented is good if you are using this with an electronics build, which I suspect most people will not. And Ferocious is obviously very good in PvE. So I'd probably say roll away Talented on this thing and get something else, say for example Brutal. Use this in PvE, obviously, because that Ferocious in that third slot is too good to pass up. Overall, it's a very sort of a well-rounded PvE focused weapon, but it's definitely not top tier roll. It's sort of, I'd say, mid-tier. You could absolutely pass on this. I suspect suspect many people would have something better, but if you are desperate for a PvE-focused LVOA, this is not a bad start. At the East 46th Street DZ checkpoint, we've got ourselves a Paratrooper SVD. It's got 160% headshot damage, very nice. Predatory, great sustained talent, absolutely top tier in PvE. You've got competent, pop and ability, get 10% more damage, very nice. And you've got disciplined here, which I don't like with an SVD, given the fact that each bullet doesn't hit very hard. It's all about hitting really fast. This talent is much better on something like an M44 or an M700. Roll that one away to something else, keep the other two because they're quite solid, and I'd say use this thing more in PvE than PvP. This was really only useful with the Deadeye gear set, which has taken huge nerfs given the fact that you can only use it on the hard scope, you know, like the big sort of the ones with the overlays, particularly debilitating on consoles where I know it's practically useless. But yeah, so I'd say this is still a great weapon for PvE, definitely not for PvP. At the East 40th Street DZ checkpoint, we've got ourselves an MG5. I really like this weapon. It's 13% damage out of cover, which is a mid-tier roll. It's prepared, which you would roll away on this because you're not really using it at 30 meters. Vicious is pretty solid, but obviously situational. If you're planning on taking damage, it's not as powerful. And Ferocious, great talent in PvE. The MG5 is that sort of mid-tier, high rate of fire, smaller magazine LMG. It's that belt-fed LMG variant, but it just feels really nice to use. It's got a lot more burst potential than the M60 or the M249. I just really like it. It's just fun to use, and as I said, roll away prepared, and it becomes quite solid. There's also a really nice Spec Ops pack here. This rolled 12 stamina out of a max of 1270. Specialized is the one that converts your firearms and stamina into skill power, which is very handy at the moment because we need all the skill power we can get. Critical hit damage is a bit underweight on this. Depending on your build, you're probably going to go for health or skill power. And burn resistance is lovely. It's pretty much the go-to resistance that you're chasing, especially if you're doing PvP. Very solid rolls across the board on this one. Do pick it up if you need it. At the East 34th Street DZ checkpoint, we've got ourselves an AUG A3 Para XS. 20% critical hit chance out of a max of 22. Solid roll there. Predatory on it. Very, very nice in PvE. Capable, totally wasted on this weapon because it's so stable as it is. Roll it away. And Ferocious, man, we're getting so much Ferocious this week. Obviously, as I've said like a million times, very good in PvE. I just really like the look of this weapon. If you're using it in PvE, Predatory is particularly nice as well because your SMG, you're going to be using it up close, which means you're going to be taking damage. This is perfect for that, to give you plenty of sustain, keep you alive as you are taking that damage. Roll away capable, and boom, you've got yourself a lovely AUG. And finally, there's also a electronics mod here, 263 out of a max roll of 267 and 3% skill haste, which is a max roll. It's pretty much a god tier rolled skill haste electronics mod. If you are looking to stack as much electronics as possible and minimize your skill cooldowns as much as possible, then you cannot do better than this. I've mentioned it in addition to the other one because this one requires Dark Zone funds, whereas the other one doesn't, so choose your poison based on that. At the 5th Avenue DZ checkpoint, we have ourselves a double barrel shotgun here, responsive, perfect, vicious, very nice, given, well, hopefully you're going to be engaging on your targets at fairly high health, and having an extra 10% bonus crit when you're sort of unloading these barrels is going to be very helpful. And Swift is actually not super bad on a double barrel shotgun because you're actually spending a fair amount of time reloading, given the fact that it obviously has a very small mag of 2 bullets. So not a bad combination here at all. It's not top tier by any stretch, but it is worth looking at. At the West 34th Street DZ checkpoint, we have a pair of Savage Gloves here. They've got 1192 stamina, shitty roll, 1200 assault rifle damage, 6% critical hit chance, and 7.5% enemy armor damage. So in combination, this is an excellent set of stats to have on a pair of Savage Gloves. Everyone loves running assault rifles, obviously, and this works really well in all instances. At the West 39th Street DZ checkpoint, we have a SOCOM M1A here, another one actually. This one has rolled with Fierce, which is probably not ideal given the fact that you're probably stacking headshot damage rather than crit when you're using this thing. You've got Accurate here, which is perfect. This thing has definite accurate needs, and obviously, once again, Ferocious, plenty of that this week. It's the roll on this is 158% in headshot damage, which is quite strong. Overall, a pretty decent SOCOM M1A. I would recommend having a look at it. At the West 42nd Street DZ checkpoint this week, we have a vertical grip foliage green. This one is ideal for anyone using the defense gear set. It gives you lots of extra optimal range on the smaller type weapon variants, including the SMGs. So this is a bit of a go-to grip if you're using that set. And just in case you were wondering, there are DZ vendors in the new DZ North. At the East 64th Street vendor, we've got a prototype stamina mod with stamina and health, but it's not as good as another one this week. And we also have a turret damage mod, 3.5%, same as before. There is a Safehouse now in the new DZ area. It's DZ9. This week it's selling a whole bunch of gear. It also sells some cosmetic items which you can pick up. They basically cost you next to nothing, so you may as well grab them. No harm there. This Tactician's Authority mask will certainly do the job. It's got 1205 electronics, which is a low roll, but it does have 10% damage to elites, which is exactly what you'd want if you were planning on using this thing in PvE. The all resistance roll up there is quite rubbish, but you can roll away that to something else. I wouldn't say this is a spectacularly well rolled item, but it will meet your needs in PvE. At the DZ3 vendor this week, the weapons vendor, we do have ourselves a police M4. Now, this one's rolled 21% enemy armor damage, which is a mid-tier roll. 16.9k per bullet damage is also fairly mid-tier. Focused, terrible talent, roll that away. Vicious is quite situational, as we've discussed, and responsive is generally very good with an assault rifle. I mean, a lot of PvP encounters still happen inside that 10-meter range, so it still gets a lot of use, but at the same time, a lot of them happen further out than that now, so it can be a lot more situational than it once was. And that's it, guys. That's the weekly vendor reset. I know it was a long one this week, but there was a lot to discuss, especially given the patch just went live, new vendors, stuff moving around, DZ North stuff, all that jazz. Wanted to cover it all off. If you liked the video, guys, do drop it a like. Future iterations will hopefully be a lot shorter than this one. Don't forget to subscribe as well for plenty of Division coverage, as well as Ghost Recon Wildlands, which comes out this week. Very excited about that one too. Guys, thank you very much for watching. Take good care, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.